let's have a look at now applying audio effects and processing to what we've recorded. So far we've been working with the raw files such as MIDI and recorded audio and samples. Now we can manipulate, we can correct, we can enhance, we can change this audio with effects. So let's go through in order of importance. So equalization is the most important. That's the way we can shape the frequency of the sound. So we can cut out anything that we don't want and we can enhance stuff that is a little bit dull or needs enhancing. So let's go to EQ. So we have 3 EQs available. We have filter, channel EQ, and EQ3. Now, EQ8 is a really good feature in the other versions of Ableton Live, but there's a way around it, because we're quite limited in terms of parametric EQs. That means the ability to augment the EQ frequency spectrum with lots of different points, essentially. So we're going to do this on the master. What we're going to do is we're going to use the filter to cut out low frequency. So we can do that by simply selecting the low cut filter. And then we can choose the frequency here and we can put it down to 30 hertz. So that essentially takes the bass out of the music. So if I press play here, let's do this. So this is usually a performance tool, but we can use it as a utility. Then what we can do is we can then use the channel EQ to boost anything. So I can now boost kind of at the lower frequencies, but because I've cut out the problematic areas here, it's only going to boost the nice ones. I can do that by select 2 dB, and I can do the highs by like 2 dB here. If I turn it all the way up, see how it makes it brighter, the lows make it more fuller. EQ3, similar sort of thing as the channel EQ, but what you do is you have a selectable frequency. So you have the selectable high and low frequency. The mid frequency is everything in between. So this you can basically do the same thing as these two, but the interfaces are not as good. You don't have this visual representation of the frequency spectrum, which I like, but you can use all three. So you could boost the mid here with this one, or cut the mid or cut the lows. And with a combination of those three, you can really augment the sound in Ableton Live Lite. Next up is dynamic processing, which is basically dealing with the loud points and the quiet points of music. We can use something called compressors and limiters to turn down the highest parts in music and turn up the lowest parts, so we have more consistent and concise sounds. Now we can overdo this. We can make music sound very one dynamic, where we want a bit of depth. And trying to get that balance is the art form of using dynamic processing. So let's try a compressor first. So what we're going to do here is we're going to turn the threshold down until we hear or we see the compressor start working. The compressor starts working by this little line here, and that's basically as soon as one of those spikes in the transient is going through the threshold, the compression is engaged. Now compression basically means it's going to turn down anything that goes above that threshold line. So the more I turn down the threshold line, the more compression happens. See there, that's basically turn down. We don't want it that much. Now if I flip this over into here, this view, I can see how much gain reduction is going on. So at the moment, not much, so I can pull it down a bit more. And I want anything from like 2 to 5 dB. Then the ratio is how much you're going to turn it down by. 4:1 is a standard kind of compression setting. 2:1, which we can go in here, go 2, and that's going to be a more transparent setting. Attack and release is how quickly that compressor is going to pull that down. So usually we have a slower attack and a quicker release. So that basically means as soon as the peak goes through, it's going to let a little bit through, which is going to make it sound a bit more transparent, then pull it down. The release is how quickly, once it's compressed, which is it like elastic band, how quickly you're going to let go of that elastic band. Quick release means it pings straight back up, so you get more a punchier sound. Slower, it's going to sound more smoother. You're going to hear more of the tone of the compressor. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video. If you've gotten to this point, firstly, thank you so much for watching this far. Secondly, if you could give us a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, it really does help us out. If you're the sort of person who's watched this far, it means you generally care about all things Ableton Live. So maybe consider subscribing to our channel, turning on all the notifications. There'll be loads more useful videos just like this coming real soon. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let's get back to the video. And be careful if you have the release too long. So like for 1 second, the compressor's not going to be able to get back to an uncompressed state. So it's going to sound, it's just going to basically sound like you've turned the music down. So go for a slower attack and a quick release. Then once you've done that, you need to boost up the overall gain. So you can check this by turning this off and on. You basically don't want a dip in volume or a boost in volume. So you can compensate for the amount you've turned it or compressed it by turning up here, which is called makeup gain. So you turn it up to compensate for the amount you've compressed it or turn it down by, but you don't want it to be boosting it too much. That's not the point of compression. The other thing is the knee. So the knee is how smoothly is it going to go. So once it's gone through that threshold, it engages the ratio. It's how quickly that transition is going to be. If it's quick, the compression is going to be a lot more visible. If you put a bigger knee, which we can view it in this view. See, if I put a knee like this, you see there's more of a point. We're going to hear more of the compression. That's quite good for, say, rhythmical stuff like drums. We want vocal stuff or master chain. We want it to be a bit more of a slower knee, so we have a bit more of an invisible transition. So that's too much, so turn it up. Next one is limiting. Limiting is essentially the same as compression, but we don't have an attack or release or ratio. It's basically, there's no ratio. Anything that tries to go above the threshold is just cut off, okay? So this is like something you would put on your final output, and it's usually good to put a ceiling of like minus like 1, and then we can push the volume into the... Now see, it's limited. What you're seeing here, there is it's limiting now. And that stops it from clipping on the output. So nothing's going to go above -1. So next is time-based effects. We've already been using some. We've been using the reverb and delay. So reverb essentially creates a sense of space. You can adjust how big the space is or how small the space is. If I play you here just this drum top by using the solo, and then here I dial in the amount of reverb. If I put the decay, see how much it changes the sound, okay? So that's the reverb, and that's found in the reverb and resonance. So remember, I have a couple more because I've got a previous version of Ableton installed, which Max for Live, so it's copied over. And then corpus as well, so let's put this on. So this acts like a resonant chamber. So it's like, imagine playing your music into a pipe. So it resonates on a certain frequency. So I put it to 100% wet and tune it. So it's essentially like a resonator. It makes a resonant sound on top of the sound you've already made. So there's another one called delay. Let's put this back to reverb. Delay just simply repeats. So we can choose this time division here. So we can have a 1. So it's slightly different on each ear. We can have it slower. So these are done in how many 16th notes are going to be in the distance from the delay. So if it's 1/16th note, it's super quick. If we have like 16 notes, it's going to be really long on this other ear. See, it keeps going. So we've got feedback. It's like how many of those delays, how long does it go on for? Then we have like repitch, fade, and jump, and that all deals with what happens with the repeat of it. Then we have beat repeat. So beat repeat's like a weird looper. So there's quite a cool like brain dance preset here. So now that's a very complex audio effect to fully understand what all those are doing, and that's another story for another day. But essentially that introduces us to presets, which all the audio effects have presets here with this little drop down menu here. So all the previous audio effects I've shown, you can use some presets, so check that out. Next one is distortion and saturation, which is found in drive and color. Now we have a guitar amp, which then goes into a cabinet. So this is great if you're recording guitar in. You have erosion, which is like a dirty, just makes things sound a bit noisy and dirty. And redux basically works as like downsampling sound. So you get digital artifacts that come in. So like digital distortion, it's made popular by like Daft Punk and people like that. So that real bitty kind of distortion. But the one I want to go over is saturator. That's a really good one. So if I put this on the drum top we've just been working on here, what we can do is we can drive and make it more distorted. DC makes it sound more cleaner, and bass is how much of the bass frequency you're going to send through the saturator. So the more you take out, the cleaner the saturation is going to be. Then also we have another filter point here, which we can boost through the saturator and put a width and depth, how much. Depth back there. And then we have the match the output, see, because it brings the volume up quite a bit. So that's the saturator, and that's the drive and color. So we also have some other modulation based effects like chorus and phase. Chorus is really good on, say, like bass sort of instruments. So if I put this on the bass here, it just creates a bit of width. We can use the dry wet note dial here. So if I take that off, it feels a lot more in the center. It makes it a bit more wider. So pull the dry wet down. I can drag audio effects onto the channel as well as putting them on a send and return. So you can replace the ones on the send and return. You can't add any more send and returns in Ableton Live Lite. Remember, you only get 2. So I was just about to say add some more sends, but you can't. So there's another limitation. We're getting the limitations. We're flushing them out, guys. That's nearly it. So utilities. So one of my favorite. So we've done instrument racks. You can also do audio effects racks. So for example, here, if I bring this down, I can drag these 2 instruments into a rack so they can be one after each other. Or if I bring this here, I can drag one, put it here, so I can have them on top of each other. So I can have like reverb and corpus happening at the same time, which is pretty cool. So if you'd have to play around with that to get that sounding good. The next one is tuner and utility. Tuner just works like a guitar tuner. Utility is probably one of my favorite effects in Ableton Live. So I'm going to put this on the master, put it right at the start. So you have a couple here. You have phase, invert. You have a width dial, so you can make it wider. So you have a mono dial, so you can make things sound mono. You have a bass mono, which is wicked, so you can check here with this headphone. So that just makes that bass bit down the middle. You have a balance pan and you have a gain. Okay, so next is MIDI effects. So this is going to look slightly different for you, again, because I have some Max for Live stuff downloaded. But essentially we've got Arpeggiator, Chord, MIDI effects rack, note length, pitch, random, scale, velocity. So I say this is just an overview of what they do. I will go over some of them in a bit more detail. So let's jump straight in. So the first one is Arpeggiator. So if I drag that onto this here, notice the difference between this and audio effects is the MIDI effects come before the instrument. So they affect the musical information language controlling the sound. So this is basically going to look at the chord that I played in. Rather than play the 3 notes at the same time, it's going to stack them one after each other at a certain rhythmical value. I can choose the value here. I can choose the style, so if it goes, or if it goes just down. So if we go up and down, and then we can choose how many steps, so that's basically how many octaves. Now if we turn the delay on, I'm getting carried away, man. I'm supposed to be teaching a lesson here. So yeah, you see, that's pretty cool, right? So next one is Chord. So if I get an empty MIDI channel here and bring it over next to here. So I just need to turn these off because otherwise I'll start jamming away again. So here we go. So let's just turn Chord on here. Hey, hope you're enjoying this video. If you'd like to dive deeper with Ableton Live, why not check out my Ableton Live full course? We not only cover all the awesome things Ableton Live can do, but we look at writing, producing a track from scratch We then look at how we record vocals, mix it, and master it, ready for release. So if that's something you're interested in, click the links below. Anyway, thanks for watching so far, and let's get back to the video. And then I'm going to put the same instruments. So can copy instruments across, press paste here. So essentially what this is going to do is it's going to harmonize MIDI notes coming in. So if I press this note here, it's one note. Whereas if I get this now and press this up 4 semitones, same note is pressing, is now harmonizing it. So it's playing that one note I'm playing and doubling up a note 4 semitones up. So if I go 7 semitones, wicked, hey? On to the next one, which I'm jumping ahead, is scale. So scale here will quantize the notes coming into it to a chosen scale. So at the moment, it's the chromatic scale. Now, it's a bit of a confusing interface, don't get me wrong. So I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to use one of the presets. I'm going to go major, put it here. I'm playing a major chord, and it's quantized to a major scale. So what happened now is, if I go through the keys, I press C, D, E. It will lock the notes to the diatonic harmony of that scale. Whereas if I had that if I have that scale off, it's playing a major chord on each degree. If I turn that on, it locks it in, which is quite cool to look at them in conjunction with each other. Now, the other one is MIDI effects rack. So I can drag that on, or I can do the same where I can highlight everything, this, and press Command G. And that puts it into a rack. Now, what I haven't stated before, what's quite cool with rack is you can then save these as a preset. So I can Command R, rename as like Chord Gen, and then save. And that will save in my instrument rack as all these settings and everything saved here. So not only can we layer things, we can save a chain of effects as one preset, which is super cool. So that's the same with audio effects rack and instrument effects rack as well. So now we've got note length. So that just deals with the length of the note. So if I put this at the start here, I can just choose the note length. You think, well, what's the point in that? It's if you don't have a sustain pedal. So you could put the note length here. So hands off. Acts as like a sustain pedal over time. So it's like your fingers are, or your foot's on the sustain pedal all the time. So that's quite a good feature. Pitch. So that we could put the start as well. We'll just change the key. So I can change it down 2 semitones. That's going to affect the scale thing here, but that's okay. And then next one, random. So that's basically going to choose random MIDI notes. So I'm pressing the same MIDI note here. So I put chance. So I'm just pressing one note here. It's being quantized by the scale thing here, but that's quite cool. Done scale, then velocity. It's basically quantizing the velocity. So at the moment, the velocity has been dictated by my controller, so I can hit it slightly louder. What I can do is I can put the lowest point of being 127, the highest point of 127. So I've got rid of velocity, essentially. So that's quite cool. That's what I use that one for. But that's essentially all the MIDI effects that are in Ableton Live Lite.